Hello, welcome to Phantom Homicide. Then the topic of our deep dive today, the Moors murders.
Ah, yes. A case that's really cast a long, dark shadow over Britain for, what,
Hmm.
60 years now? It's one of the most horrifying periods in criminal history, just pure sadistic brutality.
And calculation, too. The original trial judge, he really nailed it, didn't he? He called their actions wicked beyond belief.
Absolutely. That phrase just sticks. It captures the depth of the depravity.
And the truly awful part is, this isn't just history, it's still happening in a way. The reason we're diving back into this nightmare now is because of something very recent.
That's right. Our deep dive actually starts not way back then, but in October 2022
Hmm.
with another excavation.
Another search on Saddleworth Moor. It feels endless.
It does. Greater Manchester Police, the GMP, we're back out there, digging again. And it's all driven by that one unresolved tragedy, isn't it? Finding Keith Bennett, the only victim still lost.
So, what prompted this specific search in 2022? The sources say it wasn't just a random dig.
No, not at all. GMP got information, quite specific information, about a particular site of interest. And this came from a privately funded search team.
Right, not the police's own initiative initially. And this info included photographs.
Yes, photos. And these weren't just, landscape shots. Experts looked at these images.
What did they think they saw?
Well, the interpretation was startling. They believed they could potentially see human remains, specifically fragments that looked like maybe a human jawbone or perhaps part of a skull.
Wow, okay. That would definitely trigger a major response.
Absolutely. But, and this is crucial, you have to understand the immediate caveat. GMP were very clear up front
What was that?
that no physical evidence, no actual bone had been recovered or examined forensically at that point. It was an interpretation of images.
Okay, so potential but not confirmed.
Exactly. And the moor itself,
Hmm.
it's notoriously difficult terrain. It's vast, it's boggy, the peat shifts, the weather changes everything. So it was never going to be easy.
But they committed to a full search of that specific spot.
Oh, yes. A painstaking, incredibly thorough excavation. They had to, given the history, given the stakes, and especially given the immense emotional weight attached to that particular piece of land for Keith's family.
In that emotional way, it all centers on Keith Bennett, just 12 years old.
Disappeared June 16th, 1964. Lured away by Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. The only one of their victims never found.
It means there's no closure. The story just hangs there, incomplete for his family and really for the whole country.
Which is why our mission today is, well, it's complex. We need to look at the whole picture using the source material we have, the actual timeline of their crimes, the psychology behind it, that architecture of evil.
Then the capture of the trial and this agonizing, decades-long search. The legacy.
Exactly. To understand why they were digging again in 2022, you really have to go back and understand the original campaign of terror.
Okay, let's unpack that timeline, because this wasn't random, was it? It was methodical, calculated.
Absolutely not random. It stretched over more than 2 years, from July 1963 right through to October 1965.
And the pattern became sickeningly clear.
Horrifically clear. Abduction, usually targeting youngsters from working-class areas around Manchester, then sexual assault, torture, and murder. 5 young lives.
And it's so important, isn't it, to remember them as people, not just names on a list. They had families, lives, they belonged to communities.
Precisely. Communities that Brady and Hindley chillingly exploited. Let's name them.
The first documented victim, July 1963, Pauline Reed. She was 16.
16. On her way to a dance. And the lure Hindley used, it was so insidious, the lost glove excuse.
Asking for help finding a glove supposedly dropped on the moor seems so innocent, especially coming from a woman back then.
Exactly. Completely disarming. They drove her out there. Brady met them on his motorbike. She was sexually assaulted, her throat cut twice.
And her body wasn't found for decades.
24 years. Not until 1987 after they finally confessed to her murder.
Then came John Kilbride. He was only 12, November 1963.
12 years old. Lured from a market in Ashton-under-Lyne. He'd been earning some pocket money.
And again, Hindley used a similar tactic.
Yes, offered him a ride home, then suggested a detour, again using that same lost glove story. He was sexually assaulted, strangled.
Was he found sooner?
Relatively, yes.
Sure.
His remains were discovered in October 1965, right after Brady and Hindley were caught.
Which brings us to June 1964, Keith Bennett, also 12.
12. Just walking to his grandmother's house in Longside. Completely normal journey. Lured into Hindley's mini pickup.
The same fate. Assault and strangulation.
Yes. And as we know, he's the one they never found. the focus of all these subsequent searches.
The cruelty seemed to escalate, didn't it? The fourth victim, Leslie Ann Downey, she was only 10.
Just 10 years old, taken on Boxing Day, December 1964, from a fairground.
And her case was different, wasn't it? She wasn't taken straight to the moor.
No. And this is terrifying. She was taken back to their house, a seemingly ordinary house on Wardlebrook Avenue. There she was tied up, stripped, forced to pose for vile photographs, tortured.
Before being killed and buried on the moor later, just horrific.
Utterly horrific. The documentation they kept of her ordeal is...
Well, we'll get into that.
And the final victim, the one whose murder led to their capture. Edward Evans.
17 years old. Lured in October 1965. Met Brady at Manchester Central Railway Station, invited back to the house.
So looking at this pattern, Myra Hindley's role seems absolutely pivotal.
Oh, unquestionably. The sources really emphasize this. Their ability to actually get the victims often hinged entirely on her.
Because in the 60s, a lone man approaching a child would raise immediate red flags.
Instantly. Especially in those tight-knit communities.
Wow.
But a woman offering a ride, asking for help with something simple like a lost glove. It bypassed all those defenses.
She was the key, the element of trust that Brady needed to gain access.
She was absolutely essential to the mechanics of the crime. A terrifyingly effective lure.
And the place they chose for the burials? Saddleworth Moor. It's almost like another character in this story. It is. Vast, bleak, remote in parts. This geography of grief, as you called it. A beautiful landscape in many ways.
Yeah.
But as one local farmer put it, it's been irrevocably blackened by what happened there.
Why there? Why that specific place?
Calculation, again. It was remote enough to commit murder and bury bodies without, they hoped, being discovered. But it was still accessible enough for them to get to relatively easily from Manchester.
And the burial sites themselves, were they close together?
Somewhere, yes. It's quite chilling logistically. John Kilbride's body, for instance, was found only about 100 yards or so from the area they were searching for, Keith Bennett, in 2022.
That suggests they might have had a specific, or maybe rough area in mind for certain victims.
It seems likely for John and Keith, perhaps. The two girls, Leslie Ann Downey and Pauline Reed, their remains were found on the other side of the main road, the A635.
So even decades later, the search for Keith focuses on these tiny patches within this huge, unforgiving landscape.
Exactly. It underscores the difficulty, but also the chilling precision they sometimes employed.
The landscape holds the physical secrets, but to really understand this, we need to look inside their minds, don't we? Into that psychological architecture of evil.
Yes. This is where it gets deeply disturbing.
Yeah.
Moving from the what to the why, let's start with Ian Brady. The sources portray him as the sadistic director.
His background was troubled, wasn't it?
Very. Born Ian Duncan Stewart.
Yeah.
His unmarried mother couldn't cope, so he was fostered out to a couple in Glasgow, the Sloanes.
Were there early warning signs?
Oh, absolutely. The classic markers were there. Cruelty to animals, which is often a major red flag. Petty crime. A pattern of antisocial behavior really took root early on.
But he tried to seem intellectual, didn't he, with his reading?
He did. He cultivated this veneer, a very superficial, self-serving interest in things like Nazi philosophy, the writings of the Marquis de Sade, and Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, the Superman.
So he wasn't genuinely exploring philosophy, it was more about justifying himself.
Precisely. It wasn't about understanding, it was about rationalizing his own depravity. He twisted these ideas to create a worldview where he was superior, above conventional morality.
Entitled to power and control.
Exactly. If he convinced himself he was this Übermensch, then other people, his victims, became mere objects, tools for his gratification, particularly his explicit sexual sadism.
It sounds like a textbook psychopath.
All the traits are there in the analysis: the profound lack of empathy, the grandiose sense of self-worth, the manipulation, the constant need for power and control through violence, just devoid of normal human connection or remorse.
Okay, so if Brady was the sadistic engine, what about Myra Hindley? She's often seen as the bigger enigma.
She is the contradictory participant. Her background seems so ordinary compared to Brady's early life. Working-class girl from Gorton, Manchester. Worked as a typist. Met Brady in 1961 at Millward's Merchandising, where they both worked.
So how does a typist become involved in this? That's the huge question.
It is. And the sources outline three main psychological theories about her involvement. We need to look at them critically.
What's the first one?
The first, and perhaps the most, sympathetic view, is the dominated partner theory.
This suggests she was basically Brady's victim, too. Manipulated, coerced?
Essentially, yes. That she was psychologically broken down by him through emotional abuse, maybe even sexual coercion. That she was slowly desensitized to the violence.
So under this theory, she was reluctant, maybe terrified, acting out of fear or a twisted need for his approval.
That's the argument, that she wasn't inherently evil, but corrupted by Brady.
But the evidence, does it fully support that?
Well, that leads to the second, much more uncomfortable theory, the active participant theory.
This argues she was fully complicit, willingly involved.
Yes, enthusiastically involved even. This theory points to her very active roles. She wasn't just the driver. She actively lured the victims, especially the children.
And the sources suggest she participated in the abuse itself, particularly with Leslie Ann Downey.
Yes, and took photographs at the grave sites. Posed at them, even. Plus, her complete lack of remorse for many, many years after being caught. It suggests a genuine alignment with the sadism, not just reluctant compliance.
Okay, that's a very different picture. What's the third theory?
The third involves a specific psychological condition, the hybristophilic bond.
Hybristophilia. That's sexual attraction to people who commit crimes, right? Sometimes called the Bonnie and Clyde syndrome.
Exactly. The theory suggests that Hindley wasn't just attracted to Brady despite his criminality, but potentially because of it, that the crimes themselves fueled the attraction.
So the violence, the power, the transgression itself became part of the bond.
Yes, creating this incredibly powerful psychological feedback loop. The crime validates the relationship enables the crime. It would explain how her moral compass could be so completely overridden. Her composure during the lures, that lost glove act, suggests a deep commitment, maybe beyond just fear.
So if we put these together, Brady the sadist, Hindley maybe driven by this hybristophilic bond, or maybe just an active partner, what does that create?
It creates the perfect storm. The concept psychologists use is folie à deux, a madness shared by two.
A shared psychosis.
Exactly. This is maybe the most critical takeaway psychologically. Their relationship wasn't just criminal, it was mutually reinforcing.
Yeah.
They pushed each other further and further into depravity.
Acts that maybe neither would have committed entirely alone.
Quite possibly. Brady provided the twisted ideology, the justification, the sadistic direction. Hindley provided the essential practical means, the car, the lure, the appearance of normality, and crucially, the reinforcement. They created their own little world, a delusional system where horrific acts became acceptable, even necessary to them.
An echo chamber of evil, escalating until it finally broke.
Until the final, catastrophic murder of Edward Evans.
One aspect that makes this case uniquely chilling is how they documented everything. It wasn't enough to commit the acts, they had to preserve them.
Yes, and this speaks volumes about the psychology, particularly Brady's. It wasn't just about the act itself, it was about power, control, and revisiting that power. Preserving the moment of absolute dominance.
What kind of documentation are we talking about?
The sources list several things. Photographs of the burial sites on the more bleak, chilling landscapes marked only in their minds. Photos of Hindley actually posing at the graves.
Posing, like it was some kind of achievement.
It seems that way. And Brady kept what's chillingly referred to as a burial book. A detailed ledger, notes about the victims, the locations, a meticulous record of his atrocities.
But the most infamous piece of documentation, it relates to Leslie Ann Downey, doesn't it?
It does. The audio recording. 16 minutes long. Recorded in their house while they were torturing her.
I can't even imagine. What does it contain?
It's the sound of pure terror. Leslie Ann was only 10, tied up, stripped, forced to pose for photographs. The tape captures her voice, pleading.
The sources mention specific phrases.
Yes. Things like, "Don't undress me, will you?" And her crying repeatedly, "I want to see Mummy." It's just unbearable to think about. And they recorded this deliberately.
Not accidentally. They wanted to capture her suffering.
As part of their sadistic ritual. To preserve her terror, perhaps to relive it later. It's beyond comprehension.
And this tape was played at the trial.
Yes, in full. 16 minutes of it. The sources describe the scene. It was devastating.
The impact must have been immense.
Unparalleled. People in the courtroom, the judge, the jury, police officers, the public gallery were visibly distressed, sobbing. Some couldn't bear it. The raw sound of that child's suffering just cut through everything. It made denial impossible.
It had sealed their fate, really.
Absolutely. It ensured there was no doubt, no mitigation possible in the jury's eyes.
Yet, ironically, for all their careful documentation and planning, it was a moment of losing control that brought them down.
Yes. The final murder. Edward Evans, October 1965. Brady made a crucial error.
What was that?
It seems rooted in his narcissism again, his need for an audience, for validation. He tried to involve Hindley's brother-in-law, David Smith,
Involve him how?
by making him witness the murder. Evans was lured back to the house, Wyrtlebrook Avenue. Brady attacked him in the living room with an axe, a hatchet.
Brutally, the sources mention the number of blows.
14 times with the hatchet, then strangled him. A truly savage attack. Brady wanted Smith to see it, perhaps even participate.
And Smith, he had a police record himself, didn't he?
He did, for minor offenses. But this was something else entirely. He was apparently utterly horrified by what he saw. The sheer brutality just shook him to the core.
So he didn't become an accomplice?
No. He played along initially, helped clean up a bit out of fear, but the next morning, he couldn't live with it. He went to the police. That phone call changed everything.
That one call brought the whole house of cards down.
Instantly. The police went to the house based on Smith's report, and the evidence was right there.
Evans' body.
Yes, wrapped in plastic sheeting. The hatchet used in the murder. And then they found other incriminating items like left luggage tickets at Hindley's grandmother's house where she'd moved some things.
Ah, the tickets.
And they led to the railway station.
Manchester Central Railway Station.
Yeah.
And those tickets unlocked the final damning proof, 2 suitcases, Brady's suitcases.
And inside.
The horrors they documented, the new disturbing photographs of Leslie Ann Downey,
Yeah.
and the tape recorder with the 16-minute torture tape.
So the very things they created to preserve their power became the evidence that destroyed them.
Exactly. Plus, police found Brady's books, The Deceit, the books on perversion, Nazi Germany, and crucially, among his notes, plans for disposing of Evans' body and the name John Kilbride.
Connecting this murder to a known missing person case.
Yes. Suddenly, it wasn't just one murder witnessed by Smith. It was clear they were dealing with serial killers. The physical evidence, the photos, the tape, the witness testimony, it was overwhelming. Their claims of innocence later were just futile.
So the trial in April 1966 at Chester Assizes must have been an absolute media circus.
Oh, completely. A national spectacle. The courtroom was packed every single day. The public fascination was intense. Morbid, perhaps, but intense. And the emotional weight of the evidence, especially that tape.
We talked about the impact of the Downey tape. David Smith's testimony must have been crucial, too.
Absolutely vital. He was the eyewitness to the final murder. The prosecution built its case around him and the physical evidence.
How did Brady and Hindley behave in court?
Brady was apparently quite arrogant, detached, displaying that psychopathic coldness right to the end. Hindley initially tried to play the victim card.
The dominated partner defense.
Yes, claiming she was there, she saw things, but she was too terrified of Brady to stop him or go to the police. An unwilling witness, essentially.
But that defense just didn't hold up against the evidence of her active role, did it?
Not at all. The photographs, her luring the children, the tapes suggesting her presence and participation, it crumbled pretty quickly. Both pleaded not guilty, but the jury didn't take long.
Convicted. What were the sentences?
Brady got 3 concurrent life sentences for the murders of Evans, Downey, and Kilbride. Hindley got 2 life sentences for Downey and Evans, plus 7 years for being an accessory in the Kilbride murder.
Life sentences. But it's important to remember the context here, isn't it, regarding the death penalty?
Absolutely critical context. They escaped execution by a matter of months. Capital punishment for murder had been abolished in Britain earlier in 1965.
So if Evans had been murdered just slightly earlier,
They almost certainly would have hanged. It was that close.
and because the death penalty was gone, this case immediately became hugely significant for sentencing, right?
Yes, it effectively set the precedent for what we now call a whole-life tariff, or whole-life order in the UK.
Yeah.
The judges made it clear they should never be released. Given the extreme depravity, life had to mean life. It defined the upper limit of punishment in the absence of capital punishment.
The shockwaves from this case across Britain at the time must have been immense. The 1960s, often seen as this era of liberation, the swinging 60s.
Yes, but there was still a strong undercurrent of social conservatism. And these crimes struck right at the heart of perceived safety and innocence.
Especially in those working-class communities. You mentioned the tight-knit nature. Kids played out, walked places alone.
There was a level of communal trust, of assumed safety, that was just shattered overnight. The idea that this kind of evil could be lurking in your street behind an ordinary door, it was terrifying. It fundamentally changed how parents viewed safety.
And then there was a specific shock of Hindley's involvement, a woman.
That was huge. She very quickly became the face of the case, dubbed the most evil woman in Britain. Her mugshot became iconic, instantly recognizable, a symbol of pure evil.
Why her specifically? More than Brady even. He was the director, arguably.
The sources suggest it was because she violated deeply ingrained gender stereotypes. Women, especially back then, were seen as inherently nurturing, maternal, particularly towards children.
So her using her femininity as a weapon, as a lure to trap and harm children.
It was seen as profoundly unnatural, a monstrous betrayal of what womanhood was supposed to represent. It tapped into a deeper level of societal horror and revulsion than even Brady's sadism did, in some ways. She wasn't just a killer. She was a perversion of nature in the public eye. And the agony didn't end with the trial. Not for the families. It was prolonged for decades, largely because Brady and Hindley refused to give up all their secrets.
They didn't confess to the other two murders, Pauline Reed and Keith Bennett, until much later, did they?
Not until 1985, 20 years after they were caught. 20 years of silence and denial about those two victims.
And even then, finding Pauline took time.
Yes, her remains were finally located in 1987. That was after both Brady and Hindley were reluctantly taken back to Saddleworth Moor with the police to try and pinpoint the burial sites.
But Keith Bennett, that confession didn't lead to finding him.
No. And this brings us to Winnie Johnson, Keith's mother. Her story is just heartbreaking.
She spent her whole life searching, campaigning, didn't she?
Her entire adult life. Pleading with Brady, writing letters, appealing through the media, working with police and volunteers, just desperate to find her son, to give him a proper burial.
And she passed away without that happening.
She died in 2012, never knowing where Keith was, never getting that final piece.
Brady always claimed you couldn't remember the exact spot, right? The moor is vast, memories fade.
That was his claim, that the landscape had changed too much, that his memory was unreliable after so long.
But the belief among many, including police and the families, was different.
The widespread belief, as reflected in the sources, was that he did know, or at least had a much better idea than he let on, and that he withheld that information deliberately.
As a final act of control.
Exactly. His last way to exert power. Over the police, over Winnie Johnson, over the narrative. Keeping that one secret gave him a continued hold, a continued significance, right up until his death in prison in 2017. He took it to the grave.
The legacy of these murders, though, it goes way beyond just Brady and Hindley and the immediate families. It changed things fundamentally in Britain.
Oh, massively. In policing, in society, in law, it forced a reckoning.
How so in policing?
Well, there was a huge new focus on how missing children cases were handled. It became clear that different police forces needed to coordinate much better, share information faster, especially when dealing with criminals who might operate across boundaries.
And it forced a rethink about perpetrators, too.
Yes. Criminologically, it spurred research into serial offending patterns. And crucially, it shattered the assumption within law enforcement that women involved in such crimes were always just passive accomplices. Hindley proved women could be active, willing, sadistic participants.
And for the public, the impact was huge, too, wasn't it?
Absolutely. This case is arguably the single biggest catalyst for the stranger danger campaigns that became ubiquitous. Parenting became much more protective, more cautious. That old assumption of community safety was gone, replaced by a lasting anxiety about external threats.
The suffering of the families, like Winnie Johnson, also had a broader impact, didn't it, in terms of victims' rights?
Yes. Their visible, prolonged agony really highlighted the need for greater support for victims and their families within the justice system. It fueled debates about parole, should killers like this ever be considered for release, and helped cement the idea of whole life sentences, ensuring the family's need for justice and safety took precedence.
It raises those really fundamental questions, doesn't it? Hindley, for example, claimed she'd found religion, that she was rehabilitated.
She did, later in life, which sparked years of intense public and legal debate every time her parole came up. Can someone who committed acts like these ever truly be rehabilitated? Is forgiveness or redemption possible or relevant in the face of such extreme evil?
Or does the nature of the crime itself demand permanent removal from society, regardless of claimed changes later?
That's the core dilemma. And how do we, as a society, remember these crimes? How do we learn from them without just indulging in morbid sensationalism, without re-traumatizing people?
The search for Keith Bennett seems key to that ongoing memory. It keeps the case alive, but for a specific moral reason.
Exactly. The failure to find him means the story is never quite closed. Justice, in the simple sense of laying a child to rest, remains incomplete. That empty space on the moor defines the enduring legacy.
That shared psychosis, the folie à deux, seems the central psychological point, how their toxic dynamic created something worse than either might have been alone.
Definitely. Brady's sadism fueled by Hindley's participation and her needs met by his control and the thrill of transgression. A uniquely destructive partnership.
And the search continues, driven by hope against the odds.
Yes. The difficulty of the decades passed, it makes it harder and harder. But the moral imperative remains. Finding Keith Bennett is about more than just one boy. It's about refusing to let evil have the final word.
Remembering the victims, Pauline Reed, John Kilbride, Keith Bennett, Leslie Ann Downey, Edward Evans, their names shouldn't be forgotten in the focus on the killers.
Never. They were young people with lives ahead of them, stolen by this pair who seemed so ordinary on the surface, but harbored this abyss within them.
The fact that Keith might still be out there, potentially close to where John Kilbride was found, it shows why the search, however difficult, is seen as necessary.
It represents that stubborn refusal to give up hope, to give up on bringing a child home, even after 60 years. It's a testament, in a strange way, to a community's and a family's resilience.
Okay, so we hope you liked our today's discussion. For more such discussions, subscribe to our channel, Phantom Homicide.